Hey, Mark again here. Boy, I seem to get the good ones, don't I? Okay, here we have a Gew91. Yes, and the stock has been just completely and utterly destroyed. So today we're going to go through what it's going to take to get this stock running again to where it'll handle recoil. So Alice is already down the rabbit hole, so let's follow her, shall we? Gew91, cracked stock. Yeah, that's a pretty good crack too. That sucker runs all the way around from this stock bolt where the crack propagated, up the corner. Look at that right there. I'm going to highlight that right there. Bang, around the corner and all the way back down again. Now, this crack did not go down a grain boundary. This crack, this gun didn't just crack because the grain was running the wrong way through the grist. The grain is running perfect. This gun got broke like you'd break a stick. This thing got broke. It probably got dropped, I think, on this side. You hit it right there, and it actually opens this crack up pretty good. And what I'm thinking is happening here, when you shoot this gun, this whole gun attempts to fold up like this. It folds up. So because the support line runs from my finger, but the thrust line is up here, there is a resultant vector that's trying to tear this gun apart. Someone's tried to fix it before. You can see a dowel rod here. You can maybe see a dowel rod right there. There's another dowel rod. Wooden dowel rods aren't going to get that done. So what we're going to do is, horror of horrors, we're actually going to break this gun the rest of the way back apart again. And what I'm about to do is going to make some people cringe, but I'm just going to go ahead and finish taking it back apart and breaking it, because I'm really not breaking the stock. This stock was already cracked. It was already gone. It was already broken all the way through. So all I'm doing now is I'm blowing these two pins out. When we fix this gun, what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole from here, and we're going to come through this crack boundary, run up underneath the wrist here, and we're going to pop out. I've already started to drive this ferrule out right here. We're going to drive this ferrule out. We're going to pop out into that hole, and then we'll counterbore, put a bolt with a nut on it, come all the way down through this, and after we get we're going to lightly glue it first to get it to hold itself into position, and then we're going to run that bolt through completely coated in epoxy and pull torque on this thing and hold it together across the grain boundary and make that steel, that threaded rod, the crutch that's supporting the stock. The rest of it's cosmetic. You can see here the line here down the top of this thing. When it was sanded before, there's a dipsy doodle in it right here. All the original varnish is missing off in this entire blast pattern up in here. So this stock has already been molested. It's never going to be new again. So what we're going to do is make it work again, and you're going to know we fixed it, but at least it'll work again, and we'll be able to shoot and re-enjoy the weapon and put it back out in the field. All right, I've separated the two halves. This is kind of rough here if you're not used to seeing this kind of stuff naked. I went ahead and knocked this apart. There was a wooden dowel here into that hole. There was a wooden dowel here into that hole, and then someone had run a brass screw up from underneath. And I'm going to tell you what, it doesn't even look like they used any glue. This thing was just pinned together. There's oil soaked through here, and there's a whole bunch of wood missing up underneath this stock line. This gun is actually a contestant to get restocked. I'm going to put it together just to show you that it can be done. But this is right at the ratty edge of not being worth the labor to fix it. But we're going to do it just to show you what it takes to make this kind of thing happen. In addition to cleaning up the disaster in the back end, this gun's been duffel cut. They cut this so that you could take the stock off, put it up here, and it would reduce the overall length of the gun by about 8 to 9 inches, the length of this forend. We're going to undo that duffel cut because it causes issues when you go to shoot it and things start falling off. So we're going to make this forend attached to the back end. Now the issue here is going to be the kerf of the blade probably removed 1/8 of an inch of the length of this gun. So we got a couple of choices to make here. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to put an aircraft grade piece of 64th plywood in here. And we're going to go ahead and shim this back out, put the kerf back in so that it doesn't mess with how the nose cap went on. And then the weapon will correctly reassemble and the repair will be hidden underneath the barrel band and you won't be able to see it. The way we'll do that is we're going to thread a steel rod up into the front of this, and then in the back we'll drill a glue escape hole, fill that hole up completely full of glue, spin the threaded rod backwards, which will pressurize the hole and completely fill the hole up. One of the issues with this repair is typically they fall apart because people don't understand that when you shove a rod down in a hole, the air will drive all the glue out and you wind up with an air hole. And yeah, it looks good, but it's like a cold joint in soldering. It doesn't work. So as we proceed through this, I'll show you how we're going to repair this and what we're going to do to this thing, the back end of this. We're lucky, whoever shot this gun was really lucky that this didn't just come right back and hit him in the face. And the only thing that kept that from happening was this brass screw right here. And I'm telling you, man, this is some scary stuff. We'll be able to get out of it, but this gun is about one click short of having to be restocked. All right, I'm gonna drive out. There's a sleeve in here. And what this pillar sleeve does is that when you clamp the action down on top of the bottom metal, what this sleeve of metal does for you is it takes the wood out of the wood swells and shrinks depending upon the humidity, and that will move your point of impact. So they use this to keep the wood from getting crushed. The other reinforcement in the stock here is this cross pin that runs across to transmit the thrust load from the recoil through the walls of the magazine. The thrust joins back up here and comes to the rear. So you can see there's not an enormous amount of wood making all of that force get back to your shoulder. So what we're going to do is channel that force in and give it somewhere to go, and it's going to pick up that rod here. So in order of evolutions, what I'm going to attempt to do, and we may have to change this up a little bit as we go, but we're going to glue this back together again, and then we're going to glue this to this, and then we're going to do the nose cap work up front. We're going to go ahead and take the duffel cut part of it out. Let me get that in sight. We're going to go ahead and make the duffel cut go away. And then when we're all done, we'll bore a hole down the long axis of the butt and put the steel rod in it from the reinforcement hole back. That's going to be the order we're going to do it in. What I just described to you is 6 to 7 hours of bench time, because once we get all that done, then we got to come back in and resand all this and attempt to blend it, make the cracks go away, and then get it stained and try to make it look like it's somewhat original. We're not faking it, but there's an enormous amount of work that's going to go into this. I don't want anybody to be kidded and think that we're going to do a basket case like this for $80 or $100. That's not going to happen. On the bandsaw, I've cut 3 pieces of wood on the bandsaw. The grain in these 2 pieces is running this way, and we're going to very gently put these in a lathe, spin them, and when we spin this, we're going to go ahead and turn it round. So we're going to have a dowel with end grain on it. So when we take these dowels and we fill in the holes in the stock, these will go down and end grain will be showing, so that when we sand it off smooth and stain it, we're going to try to make the holes kind of disappear. I said I was going to use a piece of aircraft grade plywood, but while I was cutting that walnut, I noted that could just cut the shim. The grain on this runs this way. And what we'll do is we will use this as the shim to clear the duffel cut. Now we're going to just glue this in position, let it get hard, and then we'll come back, knock it down in overall shape, and then we'll sand it down until the nose cap just drops. Then once that happens, then we'll come back and we'll put the plug in. But what we'll want to do is we're going to want to set this distance back here until this distance here just comes up against the back of the nose cap as the screw drops in, and we'll have the gun back to the original length. Acroglass from Brownell's is a 2-part nylon-based epoxy that is relatively flexible but relatively stiff. It comes in a liquid format. It also comes in a gel format, hardener and resin. Fabulous stuff if used within its limitations. The other thing that we're going to use with this is a little bit of black dye pouch. I do everything black because grain in wood is black. Grain in wood is not brown. So if we repair this gun with brown Acraglass, it will look terrible and you won't know why. But you can have the black and it just looks like mineral streaking. It works well. So what we'll do is we're going to mix up by equal amounts here. We're going to mix up not a whole lot. We're just going to begin the preps. We'll probably have to do, I don't know, I would say 5 to 6 times we're going to have to mix up epoxy in order to make this work. So I'm just going to take a dab about that big. You can do this in various measuring cups. You can do whatever you want to do. I've found, though, that just making equal-sized dabs works. It just works. So right there, that's about an equal-sized dab right there. So that's close enough. That's about all the crazier you got to get with it. And we'll just go ahead and mix this up and get a good mix. And you should twist it here for a couple of minutes. And make sure that the hardener and the resin are completely and totally put together. The Acraglass gel has about 20 minutes of open time. I don't know what the official statement is on open time, but you got about 20 minutes to work with it. You can accelerate that by getting this stuff warm. And I store my Acraglass. I have a refrigerator in here that I keep my epoxy resin in it, and then I keep a little bit of ice in it. Okay, so 1 drop of black is usually enough to turn this whole pile black. The beauty of the black dyes is it tells you how well you're mixing. You can see a good little stirring pattern here. And we'll just go ahead and we'll get that all mixed up. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to put the shim on to clear the cut. And we're just going to glue that on endwise like that, and we'll let it set, and then we'll come back and trim it down so that it's all the cuts are in it and everything, and then we'll begin facing it back in this direction. And as we face it back, the fore end will move backwards, and as soon as we can get the front sight back on again and have it touch down on the surface, then we'll know we're there. So here's first step is going to be, I'm just going to go ahead and take this glass, drop it on here, and walk it into the end grain as best we can. We're just going to rub it into the end grain. We're not going to worry about it getting in the swivel retention lug pocket. We're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to get that nice. And then literally, because this is just a shim and there's no structural components to it, we're just going to kind of walk that in there like that. Bang, put that on. And then we'll use a portable elastic fastening device, and we'll just kind of get in here like that. Come across. Wait a minute, let me get in front here. Well, I didn't mock that up very well, did I? There we go, that'll work. We don't care that it's slightly wedge shaped. We don't care about anything because this is going to go on a sander and get faced off and make that right. So that's going to sit overnight, believe it or not. I want that to sit there overnight because I would like to have some good adhesion in here. So that'll sit overnight. You can speed this stuff up. I've got a 200-watt light down the other end of the bench that you'd hang right about there. And if you hung that 200-watt light there, I could get this stuff to kick in about 2 hours. What I'm not going to tell you is what Acraglass's strength is when you shove it like that. If you do what Brownells told you to do with Acraglass, this stuff sets up like a brick outhouse. All right, so we're going to set that off to one side. We'll just put that over here in the universal work holding system. And now we're going to come back and we're going to place this piece in here and we're just going to ram it in. Now, there was a lot of wood that blew out. There were a lot of shards that came out of this joint when they came apart because that screw was hidden and we didn't know it was there. To be really honest, I'm not going to sweat these shards too hard. They're all up inside. And you see, well, this one here was on the outside and that one went right there. So we'll glue that one back in. But other than that, we're not really going to have a lot of heartburn over the fact that we lost some parts out of this, because there is no way we're going to be able to disguise the fact that this had been worked on. That's not going to happen. We're not going to be able to disguise it. So we're not even going to sit here and try to pretend that we know where all these little pieces go. It's not going to happen. It never does. So, all right, here we go. Let's take a big dollop of this, and we're just going to go down into these screw pockets here where all these screw holes were drilled and all this wood was removed, and we want to fill all this up. This gel is nice because it doesn't run and it doesn't get all over the place on you here. We'll pack in. We're even going to fill out because some of the exterior portions of this stock are just going to be black acroglass, and it'll look right. It'll look right. All right, here we go. I knew I want some up there too. I want some right up there, and I want some right there. Okay. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and stick that in. Let's see if we can get all this to come up tight. All righty. There we go. The gun can only be new once. It's never going to be new again. So to say, well, you could do that repair and it should be invisible. Yeah, nice try. But this gun, this joint had been flexed so many times that all the corners are beat off of it. And it's not coming back. So I'm literally filling in all of the dots here with the glue, and we're going to comb all that off later when we put it in, and you're going to have a big black repair here, but it'll be structurally sound when we're done. The last thing we do is I take the rest of this glue and I ball it up in a little wad like this, and then I put the stick in it like that, and I set it aside because when this gets hard, then I know that I got a good epoxy joint. Every now and then, if you're not paying attention, you won't mix this stuff right, and it doesn't set up right. It's not the epoxy's fault. It's the weak link between the stock and the concrete floor I'm standing on. Now that we have the stock apart, I have done some preliminary work here where I've come back in and glued this piece that blew off. And as you can see here, I've filed off the acroglass. You can see the black. I use black acroglass because black looks like green. There is no brown green. There is black green. One of the things that I've noticed when we've gone through this stock is this entire stock was held together with that brass screw. There were 3 pegs holding it in. They were all broken. The only thing holding this stock together and keeping this sharp edge right here from coming back and poking the owner of this thing in the face was one brass screw. So suspect all broken and previously repaired stocks. The last individual that went in here and did this used no glue. This whole thing was mechanically repaired, and you cannot take this recoil energy backwards through a mechanical or even a glue joint. What we'll do is glue this, and that's what we're doing right now. We're gluing this up, and then we're going to take a drill bit, coming it back in here, and just come all the way up, drill a hole all the way up this thing, and pop into this stock bolt hole, and put a steel spine in order to move the recoil load. This gun wants to do this. I've said it previously. This gun wants to do this under recoil, and we have to prevent that from occurring. The recoil load from years of flexing mechanically have bent this entire portion of the stock down. They've bent this down this way. Because of that, we can get this glue joint to line up back here, but it doesn't line up there. And if we get it to line up here, it doesn't line up back there. So there is going to be some chisel work, and I've already done some of it. You might be able to see here, there's a flat that's been chiseled off, and I've come back in and done a little bit of chisel work because it's not going to go straight back together again. It didn't come straight apart, and it's a piece of wood. So when all this is together, there is going to be this fairly large notch of missing wood here. I've got 2 options. Try to fill that in with a piece of walnut. The grain won't be right and it'll look terrible. Or just make it black acroglass, and let's admit that the decision to crack this gun in half was made 100 years ago, and we'll just go from there. The next step after this now is going to be to mix up some epoxy and get on with it. Clamping force will be provided with a surgical rubber tubing. I like this stuff. It's relatively cheap, but it provides, if you really stretch the heavy stuff tight, it provides almost 5,000 pounds of clamping force on this joint. And I can hear you carpenters, what about squeeze out? Well, this isn't a piece of furniture. This is a gun stock. And to keep it remotely dimensionally accurate, I want to clamp down on this thing really well. So what we'll do here, we're going to go in and apply. We'll mash the glue all over this. We'll put it all over this, and we'll make sure that we get it down inside the holes, and then we'll clamp it up and let it set. You can push acryglass. You could take a 100-watt lamp down over the top of it, and you could actually push it and make it set faster. And I've done that, but only when I'm, oh, wow, look at that. I've done that, but only when I'm doing it, like if I'm, here we go, here's a piece right here. I put a little bit of acryglass there, put some mold release on it and set it down. I don't mind pushing that. I'm not going to push this. There's a tendency when people acryglass things to want to acryglass this whole gun at once. And I'm going to tell you, I'm probably going to take 7 or 8 sittings to get all of the little things that I want to fix correct on this. There's all these little notches. Acryglass will set to itself, so it does not need to be all put on in one great big dump. Well, in our particular case here, we're going to go ahead and dollop out and fill in these holes. They don't have to be full, but I'm using them as a place for hydraulic escape. Here we go. We'll just put this stuff on. Acryglass is not inexpensive. It is, in my opinion, the best. It's the thing that has held me the best for all these years of doing stuff, and it has never let me down if you do your part. You'll see I have 2 sticks here. There's a stick setting on the ground, and then there's this one. And the reason for that is that you take the hardener out with one stick, take the resin out with the other, and that way you don't pollute your jar. These 8-ounce jars here, this 8-ounce jar of acryglass will last me, I don't know, a good month or 2 in the shop. So, you know, that's where we're headed there. Okay, we're going to completely coat this. And the reason why you have to coat both pieces, even with a conventional adhesive, is you want to make sure you work it down inside all of this missing grain. And then take everything extra off the top. All right, now we'll do this piece here. And we'll work. Important note, if you get a blind hole, this hole here is blind, you get a little blob of epoxy that'll form on the top of it. And this is why when people try to glue bolts in, it doesn't work. When we drill the long hole up the axis of this, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But in our particular case here, we're just going to get this everywhere. And I want to save just a little bit. So there we go. We're going to get that in there. Knowing fully well that the wood from here down isn't going to touch. It's not going to touch. This thing is going to be one great big glue factory. If it wasn't such an old gun and it wasn't so historically significant, I would have either told the owner to hang this thing up or do another stock for it. Neither one of which were going to be nearly as inexpensive as this repair. All right, here we go. So now we're just going to kind of put it all together. I'm going to get that to kind of slide up in. Here we go. Get that there to make contact. All right. This was the step that the last guy did not do. They didn't do this. Okay. I gotta be out of view here for a minute because my mouth is holding the other end of the rubber. There we go. Cross that over, now I can take my mouth off of it. Okay, so as you can see, this is turning into one big, nasty, unrequited mess. But guess what? Like most things, this is the lady making the Rice Krispie squares on the commercial. It looks worse than it is. Okay, hang on here a little bit more. Sorry I'm out of view, guys, but got to use my entire upper body. Got to put a little butt in it. We all know I got some. Okay, there we go. Cleanup of acryglass that hasn't set yet, you use vinegar. I have a bottle here that Rusty has appropriately told me I don't have correctly labeled. So you think it's Windex, but it's vinegar, and thank God it's not poison. This is just regular vinegar, but really what it is acetic acid. And acetic acid does an extremely good job of taking off uncured acryglass. Yeah, you smell like the north end of a southbound cow, but who cares? You got it off your hands, right? The real problem comes was people that will glue this together and think they can stop here and make this glue joint carry all of this linear force in shear through this joint. You can't do that. We must go one further step after we're done. I don't care how good your adhesive is, and Acroglass is the best in my opinion. You can't ask a glue joint to carry this work. So what we'll do next is we're going to drill a hole from the butt all the way up into this stock bolt hole, like I said previously, and we're going to allow a steel rod to carry this load all the way through and make this thing safe again. Because the issue is like the previous repair, 40 years from now, somebody isn't going to be privy to this. They pick this gun up, don't realize it's held together by a wood screw, and wind up getting smacked in the face with it. And that's what we're trying to prevent here. Now I'm going to address the duffel cut. This is where the gun was cut off in order to make it shorter, to make it fit into somebody's suitcase or under their coat. Well, what happened was the forend got shorter because of the curve of the saw. So I've glued a block of walnut onto this. And what we'll do is we'll come in and we're going to sand this block of walnut off until the forend moves this way far enough to allow the forend screw to drop. So if you can see here where we're at, we're too long, and sooner or later this will get back to right about there and the forend screw will drop. Then when that happens, we'll put a mold release on the underside of the shroud all the way back so that the glue can't stick to it. We'll stick it down in there. We'll bring this up underneath, we'll put it together, and we'll rubber band it all together so that this sticks to that. When that's done, we'll then cut a channel from here to here, and we'll lay a steel bolt down inside that channel, and then we'll re-glass it back in, because you cannot expect this glue joint through all of this leverage to hold up under that punishment. You need to have a reinforcement. Again, the glue, though very excellent, is not expected to do that kind of work. What I'm attempting to do, we're going to shave this wooden shim until this round part right here fits into this inlet. And also what will happen then is this screw hole will come around and line up. Let's go here, let's take this apart. That screw hole will line up with this and it'll drop straight through, and then we'll know we've shaved it enough. We'll go ahead and glue it and just tack it in place so that it stays put. I've been to the sander and I've sanded down this shim located here. And I've moved the nose cap back until I can now put the screw in place. So that completes this. We'll glue, and then once we've got it tacked together, we'll come in and we'll add the part down inside the barrel channel. Okay, I'm going to apply the adhesive. Once again, Acroglass from Brownells. I'm not plugging their stuff, guys. It's just the best thing that I've found that works. And gals. I have 7 apprentices, 3 of which are ladies. They checker better than all of the men. So I'm not, although there are not a tremendous number of ladies in this game, but when you run into a girl like May, well, and you got to start wondering whether or not your preconceived notions were wrong. Okay, here we go. We're going to apply in here. We're also going to put some in the barrel channel because we would like to make a small saddle here up inside the barrel channel right there. We've applied plenty of mold release to the other part because God only knows nothing is going to make Othniel happy like screwing up that barrel sleeve. Yeah, buddy. Okay, let's see here. We're going to put this down in the Acroglass, and then we are going to apply band, rubber portable unit of issue 1 each, Mark 1 Mod 0. You would call it a rubber band. Just hang on to that there. And then we'll stick this up in here, slide that up in, let that get straight, pop the nose cap on, put the screw in just to make sure that the screw lines up. More portable rubber band looking stuff here. Rubber bands make good holders for things. I test fit all this before we started the video just to make sure that I wasn't going to make a complete maroon of myself. Okay, so we're now set. We have to let all that cure. This stuff doesn't dry. It cures. When we get done there, we'll cut all this back off from underneath the stock line here, check fit the band, and then we'll put a reinforcing rod up inside the stock line. We'll show you that later. And that should pretty much handle the duffel cut. Meanwhile, this 100% three-toed mess we got going on back here in the rear end of the gun will also set up. I've removed the rubber tubing that we had wrapped around this stock. The rubber tubing provides an enormous amount of compressive force, which allowed me to really push this stock back together again. But I'm actually talking to you now because there's something I want to make very clear here. And this particular gun has had a history, and part of its history is that it was broken by someone, probably from getting tomahawked up against a tree. I could sand this stock down, put a very dark stain on it, make this thing look beautiful. But then that erases its history, and we don't want to make its history go away. We want to put it back in the field so several more generations can actually enjoy it and understand why so many people died. Okay, so when we've done this, we're actually able to turn this back over again and be able to show you that on the other side, I'll be able to clean it up. Let me just get it here so you can see it. We'll be able to clean it up quite well. And this entire crack, you'll see it, but not so much. We've had to remove the patina, there's that word again, but we've had to in order to do the crack. The first person that tried to fix this crack actually removed that patina. There's a dent here that was missing from where all this wood was missing when the gun got cracked. I'm not going to fill that in because that'll just be a huge black shanker. Yes, it'll be smooth, but it won't pass the gun rack smell test. So we'll come in and make this gun structurally sound. We will attempt to blend the finish from one end to the other. We'll try to make it look like it had years of waxes from oils from your hands. And in fact, I'm going to take it outside, put some sand and some oil in my hand and grind it in. We'll tell the owner, throw a little bit of linseed oil on it occasionally, and eventually the whole gun will look again like it had looked originally, and then the repair will look 80 years old. But we certainly don't want to wind this old girl back to zero, that's for sure. When we originally discussed how we were going to fix this, we talked about running a bolt all the way up the long axis as I've drawn on this yellow line here. We really don't want to do that. Optimally, the more I'm looking at this, optimally we want to come across the crack boundary at as close to a 90-degree angle as we can get across. So the top of this gun hasn't been disturbed. The bottom of it has. The cheater's way to do this, the easy way to do this, would be to just take a hole, bore it all the way through, run a steel bolt through it, cut it off, cap it with some dowel rod. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to come, here's the most amount of wood on the bottom, the most amount of wood on the top. We're going to come through at a 90, blind drill it. Make a hollow reinforcing bolt so that the glue's inside and outside, and then we'll cap on the bottom with this dowel that we made last week, where the grain on the dowel runs this way. So when we drive the dowel in, it will look like the face grain of the wood and the repair will disappear. I've drawn the white line where I want this hole to go. And I'm using a Forstner bit, and Forstner bits cut cylindrical holes, and that's what I'm looking for. That's approximately the diameter of the dowel rod that I made. So we're going to plunge in and begin the hole, plunge in, rotate, and advance. And when we get in far enough, we'll stop, pull it out. We're going to put a piece of tape on it because we do not want to punch through. This is very subjective. This hole is just going where I want it. Now you would ask, why don't I start in this hole? Because I'm trying to leave as much wood as I can possibly leave. This distance from here to here is getting larger, but the distance from here to here is getting smaller. So the place where the two distances are the largest are here. It just is what it is. I'm trying for the strongest repair I can make. So I'm just going to poke down here. Let me make sure I'm in the middle. Right there. Right there. So I'm poking in where this line intersects. And I'm going to begin the drilling process, and I'm just going to remove the slightest amount of wood. And then as I do that, I'm going to begin to rotate and allow the drill to cut. Cut, 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 cut. Because what I want is cylindrical access. And you can't start the drill bit that way. It won't begin. Okay, there we go. Now I'm boring in. Now I'm going to stop and make sure that I'm tangent, and I am. You can see we're starting to break through all that garbage that was up inside there before. And in fact, a lot of what's coming out, a lot of the detritus that's coming out, we're all the way up to the glue joint. You can see all the rotted wood and everything that's been falling out. So we'll keep penetrating here. I'm going to back the chips out. Now we're going through the glue joint. You can see the stuff that's coming out is black. So we're going to stop for a moment. And I'm going to take a piece of masking tape here. And I'm going to say, all right, when the drill comes up to here, I want it to stop. So I want it to stop halfway through the word Colombian. I know this is a little goofy, but it's going to work. That's simple enough. When that piece of tape gets to the bottom of the stock line, that's where we have to stop drilling, and we're pretty close already. Measure once, cut twice. The gun is only historically significant one time. We're almost there. One more push. Bam, we're there. So now we have a full depth hole drilled through the crack boundary at a perpendicular angle. And I think that's going to do it for us. The next thing we'll do is we'll go over and make the piece that's going to slide up inside the hole, acroglass it, and then when we're done, we'll cut this off flush, re-inlet this, take care of this rat's nest on the other side, and we'll be ready to inspect the metal and put it back together again. We're at the horizontal boring machine, or my lathe, if you want to call it that. All we're going to do is we're going to run this drill bit down here to that pencil line, and this is going to be the spacer that's going to go inside the stock. It's a full quarter to half an inch too short, so when we drive it all the way in, the glue and any air that escapes will escape up the center hole. We could have done this out of a piece of 1/8 inch pipe nipple or whatever. I just happen to have this, so here we go. We're going to light up the lathe and slowly drill a hole. For you oil fans, we've got some telephoto lenses on order. They're expensive. We don't have them yet, but I'm not using oil. I understand that, but whenever I use oil, it gets all over the camera lenses. Yeah, I know it's not straight. I know it's bouncing the drill bit all over the place. I really don't care. I'm just running a hole up the center of a relatively soft piece of stock. When we get the entire drill bit in, we'll come out and clear. We'll run back in again. And clear. I'm gonna need that chuck key sooner or later, the big one. Resist the temptation when you're drilling holes to bring your fingers up in here and clear this swarf. If that gets a hold of you, it's a nasty cut. Just let it drop free. Okay. I need to hang on to that a little tighter. Let me go ahead and tighten down on this. There we go. This is one of those custom, unobtainable pieces that you just can't buy anywhere. We have to make this stuff because you just can't buy it. If you were available to buy it, you wouldn't pay for it because it would be brutally expensive because a guy like me would have to make it, and we're right back in that conundrum. So it's just cheaper to pay the guy that's making it. Almost there. Now it is absolutely impossible to drill a hole this deep and have it come straight. And it's almost not going to happen that this hole is going to come out this side in the center. I really don't care. This is just an air escape hole. Okay, a little bit more here. A little bit further down. Yes, the hole's awfully deep. No, it's not being drilled with the right kind of drill. I understand all this. But for what I have to do and the amount of time that I have to do it in, this is actually going to work just fine enough. Okay, we're all the way through. The next thing we're going to do now is hacksaw it off. Okay, I've reset, and I'm just going to cut some glue grooves in this. I'm just going to go ahead and groove this to give the glue something mechanical to hang on to. Nothing set in stone about how far apart these are. It's just a comfortable turn. You see this when you're doing, like when you're glass bedding something. This gives a mechanical lock to the glue as well as a chemical bond to the outside of the pipe. I'll fly in here and get one more. See if I can sneak another one in right there. On the lathe, I've made a piece that's hollow. It's drilled all the way through, right? We cut some grooves here to give it some mechanical stop, and that's going to go up inside the hole after we fill it up full of acroglass that I have already made, and we'll just pound that up in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is roll here. Hang on a second. Let me get that out where you can see it. I'm just going to roll this in the mung. Okay, and then we'll take our spatula and just roll acroglass up inside that hole. We're going to roll way more glass up in there than we need. We're just going to pack it and let it squirt out. We'll just pack this hole. And this will give us some structural integrity across that crack. And that will make me feel just much, much, much better about what would happen if the glue were to completely fail. The whole thing would come back in your face, and I just don't want to be there. Okay, so we're going to stick that up inside, and now the air is going to come out. The air will come out the center of this as we pound it up in there. Okay. A little bit more. Okay, you can hear the change in tone as that sucker touched down. Then what we'll do, we'll take this glue and we'll shove it up in the hole here. And we're leaving a little around the edges because we just want it to fill in. Now, a long time ago we made this cross grain block where the grain, as I've explained before, the grain is actually running in the direction of these two pencil lines here. So we're going to line up the pencil lines, line this up inside, and just kind of tap this bad boy up in here. Okay, so now when that sets, that will be a cross grain plug with black around it. And that's actually going to work pretty well. Actually, hang on. Never hit it harder. Get a bigger hammer. Here we go. That's in now and set. I'll come back and I'll wipe some of this extra acroglass off into a fillet, because the less of it we have laying on the surface of the stock, the less of it I have to clean up later. And once again, we're right back to the whole thing with the vinegar. But that's us right there. We'll be back. Comb all this off, comb the other side of the stock up. We'll put it back together again and she'll be runnable. All of this acroglass is now hard. It's all hard. We're going to come in and cut this off just to get it out of the way. All right, we're just going to get that out of the way. I have acroglassed also into the back side of the trigger guard housing here. So we're going to come in with a chisel, clean that up, come in with files, clean all this up, and see what this looks like. Here we go. Hang on a minute. Allow me to sheathe the patent wood sheathed carbon pointing device. Okay, I've had woodworkers go, what? You're working on wood with a file? Okay. So if you work on wood with, say, a significantly more aggressive rasp, let me cut in front here. Let's take a look at my Nicholson 50, okay? This is a really aggressive rasp. But if I'm working with this very aggressive rasp and I touch down, I'll put these huge streaks across it. So it's just a question of cojones. How close do you want to go? See? I run out of nads right about there. So we're going to do this. Flat file. Because we're actually going to file down onto the wood. The original repair had removed much of the original surface finish here. So since that cake has already been baked, we're not going to worry about going down and getting to the surface of the wood. What I don't want to do is put big cracks in it, big gouges. Because one of the secrets to woodworking is to not screw it up in the first place. Very lightly comb through this. Now the black plug, this black spot, is where the original brass screw had been run through this. That brass screw is now gone and been replaced by something with considerably more chutzpah. We're not trying to reshape this. We're just trying to very, very lightly taper this off. And then as we go, we'll take lighter and lighter and lighter cuts until we just blend all this up the stock line. Like I said, the cat's already out of the bag here. So here we go. And there we go, one smooth contour all the way to the back. And then we'll just keep feeling for nicks and pops and keep going and continue to remove all of this. I'm going to reposition here and get up so we can see what we're doing right there on the flat side, right there. Crank down. Be careful when you're cranking down on the vise here because you don't want to crush the stock. That's why I have this piece of felt in here, and this piece of felt is keeping the stock from being crushed, and that's what we don't want. So again, with the more aggressive rasp, we're just knocking the surface off of it. Yeah, that's quite close enough. There's still some rubber sticking in here. What an absolute hot, sticky mess. But it's working. You hear me banging that file on a table every now and then. That's to knock the sawdust out of it. Very hard to describe in pictures what my hands feel right now. I'm just feeling that when it touches down on the old stock, I can just feel it grind through. I'm not trying to remove any contours here. Just trying to take all this old stuff off flush. Original stock maker would be moving in this direction here to put a slight thumb piece in. We'll follow that curve. You see, we're just milking this stuff off the top. And everything else that was in the cut, the brake line is right through here. So there's the brake line right now. So we're just following that, trying to knock everything else off, and then we're going to come in with a hickory stick and burnish this. Now, why not sandpaper? Well, sandpaper wasn't really in common use even when this thing was made. Maybe the furniture guys were using it, but the gun guys were using Sheffield steel. They were scraping and filing. They weren't using sandpaper, and I don't want to have to commit. I could sand this entire stock out, like I said before, and make it look all kinds of pretty, but that's not the point here. Okay. We're getting there. Important note, I've never used this file on metal. The minute you use the file on metal, it is worthless on wood. This file has been confined to woodworking only duties. It's only one of two I have for it. Okay. There's a inspector's cartouche or unit mark or something here that's below the level of the stock, and I don't want to get down into that and remove that. I want to be careful. You can see years of dents. There's all kinds of character all over this thing, and I'm trying to not fill all that character in with epoxy. I'm just trying to make sure the crack is filled all the way to the top, and then the rest of this is just going to be, we're going to leave the character marks. There's going to be some acrylic glass bleed out. We're almost there. Then we'll start draw filing. Put the tail in your left hand and start running the file the long way. And this gets rid of all of the extra filing marks. Gets rid of a lot of ills. So we don't have to sand. And the stock just looks correct. Almost there. Again, we did not punch through the top, so there's no witness mark on the top. Believe it or not, this is actually kind of solid. Gee, I wish I had some water. Do me a favor, go get that wet and bring it back. Get it soaking ass wet. Okay. So while my assistant is out grabbing that, I'm going to finish up with a little bit of contour here, and then we're going to get the wood wet, and we're going to lift the grain. And we're just going to make sure we got nothing going on there. Believe it or not, that's pretty close. And all these little nicks and pops and dipsy doodles are all over this gun anyway. So I'm not going to get on and file all these out. This thing will look like a washboard when I'm done with it. I don't want it to look like a washboard. I just want it to look relatively original. That's nice and smooth, and this thing isn't going anywhere. Look at this. We're actually bending this stock in the vise. It's actually flexing. It's not flexing up where my left hand is. It's actually flexing. I thank you. So we'll get this thing soaking wet here, and I'll show you what it looks like when it ages before the stain. So here we can actually see now the grain boundary. Let me redo this. There we go. We'll get that out of the way so you can actually see it. This is the crack repair here, there, up there. It's an honest repair. It is what it is, but that's where we're going to be. It's a little bit more prep. I'm going to go ahead and hit this thing with a hot air gun and dry it off. My big head in the way. All right. And this doesn't even need sandpaper. I don't even go below 220 grit anyway when I'm sanding the stock. And all we're going to do is just blend this now with a little bit of steel wool. And we're going to be there because we didn't screw it up. Okay, we'll go there. And then we'll take this and we'll just sand it out with some steel wool. And we'll hit it with a little bit of arbitrarily red Minwax here. You can use any kind of stain. It doesn't matter. Stains are fine. Alcohol-based, water-based, aniline, whatever you want. Make sure you put it on carefully though and pristine. Don't try to get it on your fingers or else it'll, oh, well, whatever. My wife will complain that my index finger is dark for the next day until it wears off. There we go. See, when you get all the way done with that, it almost looks like it belongs. All right, we've changed camera angles here. You can see where it's gone from kind of shiny up here to dull where the repair was, and then back to shiny again. Well, that's shiny. There is no finish in a can you can put on this thing anywhere. This is 100 years of the weapon being handled, and we're not going to be able to replicate this. We can get the color about right. The closest thing I've come to replicating handling, believe it or not, is a toilet ring out of a toilet. This is literally a wax ring. This is about a 25-year supply of wax. So all I do is I get the stock hot. We're just going to warm her up a little bit. And then we're literally going to just wax the stock down. And this is about the best I've seen to replicating handhold and whatever here. We're going to put this on, we'll rotate and do the other side. Let me get in shot here. And then we'll come back once the wax sticks in and we'll fill the pores in with it. And it'll look correct because none of these guns, military weapons, did not have a whole lot of finishing time on them. Except for maybe a Krag Jorgensen. That gun was a freak in nature for how well finished it was for issue to GI troops. General infantry never had it so good. Pity the round sucked and the gun was weak, but boy, it was beautifully finished, that's for sure. Okay, now we'll take the wax and we'll just melt the wax into the pores. When that sets up, we'll buff all that back. I'm gonna tell you what, that is gonna jam up when we get that done. Get up under here. Could flip it over, I guess. This fills in all the cracks. It just looks like 100 years of I don't give a crap. All right, I'm gonna fade out and get my buff, which looks an awful lot like one of my old t-shirts. And we're just gonna go ahead and buff this in. And it makes this beautiful shiny patina. Oh, wow, it almost looks like that was repaired 100 years ago. We're not trying to fake anything. We're just trying to make it disappear on a gun rack. Yeah, there we go. How about that, huh? Shiny to shiny to shiny. We're up forward. This is the duffel cut. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera. But there is a shim right here that we glued in. And that shim was there to pick up for the curve of the saw in order to stand the forward part out enough so when we slid the nose cap on until the screw just dropped. And when we're all done, you can see we acroglass through the channel here. So this whole duffel cut's been undone. This is the uncleaned up side. Let me get into the center here. Right, there we go. This is the uncleaned up part. You can see where the glue joint's hanging over. All I'm gonna do is come in and knock this back. And once we knock it back, it'll look like this side. And then the barrel band will cover it and you will not see it. So we get down into this thing and we realize that we have to remove a little bit of this extra acroglass. Lighting is amazing. Your eye can't tell an inch in and out, but boy, you can tell 1/1000th of an inch this way. So it's kind of important to get a little contrasty with the lighting. You see as I come across how it goes into shadow, and I know I'm in front of the camera here, but you see how the lighting changes. And you're looking for contrast. So the cameraman They want this light straight on it, and I want it over here. So there's this constant battle in here between how we have this lit when we work on it. So for right now, as a compromise, we're gonna live with this light just kind of hanging right here. But it's all about the lighting and about tricking your eyes into doing what the heck you want your eyes to do. Now, since I'm in my 50s and I'm blind, I have to have optical support. Optivisor, you can pick one up from Brownells for, I don't know, $45, $50. If it wasn't for these things, this blind as a bat fool wouldn't be doing anything for you. All right, we're gonna clean out. See, I can't see squat. Hang on a minute. There we go. Let me get around that. There we go. Now you can see and I can see. So all I'm doing is just cleaning out these areas here, knocking this extra aqua glass out of the way, and pretty much just making room. Now I can pick this clear. Oh, look at that. I knocked it completely off its mounts. Who knew? We'll take the bottom metal here. All right. The bottom metal is going to drop in here, and what we're looking for, it doesn't go all the way down. And what I'll do is I'll continue to inlet this bottom metal until this will drop all the way in, because this wood was all disturbed, and we came in here and did a mammoth job of re-gluing this. So since we did that, none of this wood is going to line up here. We know that. So you got to come back in and re-inlet it, and then we'll have it all sitting down there and we'll be looking pretty. In the middle of doing this job while reassembling the gun, we've discovered something that I'm sure has kicked every Gew91 owner's ass at some point in time, and we're going to show you something. It required me to undo some work we did to learn the secret, so let me share it with you. This piece right here, this entire stacking swivel rotates 90 degrees. I broke the glue joint in order to be able to make this handier, because we did not understand what was going on here. But at the end of the day, this rotates 90 degrees and comes off. And that's the answer to getting this apart. Because when you look at it, I'm telling you, I've looked at a lot of guns and I had no clue. We sat here and stared at this, and there it is. We're not going to go back and show you how we glued it all back together again. The next time you see this gun, it's going to be completely greased up and ready to rock. We've put a Gew91 back in the field. It's kind of rough, but I think it passes the smell test. This is without a doubt the largest crack I've ever had to fix on a gun ever, by about 4 inches. But I feel very confident that we're going to be all right, because we have a solid steel plug running across the grain, and we didn't adulterate the gun, and it doesn't look too bad. It really doesn't. Up in front, where we learned about how this stacking swivel worked, I had broken this duffel cut, and we glued it back together again and put it all back, and everything's right now right as rain. We also took a chamber casting of the bore, and we verified that this is a 318 bore, not a 323. So we don't want to run something that's 5 thousandths too big down the bore and blow it up. What a pleasure to be able to work on a final piece of gear like this.